Hi, my name is Michelle, and these are my audience members, Megan, Rosemary, and Daniel. And Caitlin, too. Okay, this is my note card. Front side.
Holy shit, this is a
back side. Dissociative identity disorder is a complex disorder that has many different aspects. To start off, dissociative identity disorder was not always the name for it. It used to be called multiple personality disorder. That was changed in 1994 because they wanted to separate it from the media aspect and they wanted to try to make the less induced. So one of the highly televised things that you might have seen was actually an X-Men Last Stand. If you remember Jean Grey, her alternate personality was the Phoenix, and that really is a very accurate description of what multiple personality might look like. So the basic definition would be that two or more different identities take control of a person and they exchange control. And once one exchanges the control, the other personalities have no recollection or knowledge of the others. And this is going to result in memory impairment that can't be explained just by forgetfulness or by even amnesia, because it's like they're actually living separate lives. And one of the issues with multiple personality disorder is that only 1 to 3% of the general population is suffering from it, according to the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation's 2011 article, Guidelines for Treating Dissociative Identity Disorder in Adults. So because it is so rare, it's hard for them to study it and to actually get an accurate description of what it looks like, how to treat it, and just what causes it. And one of the articles that helps to talk about what might cause it to have so much difficulty diagnosing is the article entitled Dissociative Identity Disorder by Shobha Pais. And it talks about how not only is dissociative identity disorder rare, but when it is found, it takes years to diagnose. It can take as little as 1 year to as much as 5 years just to diagnose it. And in those years, they will talk to your family members, they'll talk to your friends, they'll talk to your employers, they will talk to pretty much anyone you've had contact with to try to figure out whether or not you actually have this. And even with all these precautions, it's often misdiagnosed. And it can be diagnosed as something else, or something else can be diagnosed as it, though that's rarer. Because there is a lot of controversy with dissociative identity disorder, and a lot of psychiatrists don't even believe that it's a real disorder. A lot of psychiatrists, and one being Guy Boyson, who said in his 2011 article, The Scientific Status of Childhood Dissociative Identity Disorder, a review of published research, he says that people could develop dissociative identity disorder through social stereotypes and faulty therapy techniques. So he's basically saying that some of the people who actually are diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder did not have dissociative identity disorder until their psychiatrist actually induced it in them. And whether that's because they just did it by accident because they thought, oh, hey, this is what this person has, and then that person ended up developing it because they thought that's what they should have, or because the therapist actually wanted to induce it. And there was actually a very publicized case where a psychiatrist did that exact thing. He had a patient who might or might not have legitimately had dissociative identity disorder and got her to develop over 200 different personalities, some of which were animals, mythical creatures, and just all kinds. And that actually brings us to the 2012 article, Dissociation and Dissociative Disorders, Challenging Conventional Wisdom, where it points out the inconsistencies like lack of childhood diagnosis and the spike in dissociative identity disorder diagnosis since 1980, and the presence of bizarre personalities like animals and mythical creatures. That was not normal up until around the 1980s is when that really started to spike. And that's also when it started to be more publicized. So that all goes into, is it actually being caused by childhood trauma, or is it being caused because people think, oh, hey, this sounds like what's going on with me, when in reality they just have something else that's much easier to take care of and is just very different. It's a very self-inflicted disease, a lot of people think, and that's a big source of controversy for some people. because some people say it's childhood trauma and it's a coping mechanism, and that's what causes it. But then the other side is going, no, that's not true. Where's your evidence? Where are the case studies? There's no long-term evidence of anything. And that's part of the reason why it's so hard to tell whether or not this is a legitimate disorder. And so obviously there's a lot of discussion for dissociative identity disorder, and that includes the definition, the methods of diagnosis, and there's just so much that nobody knows about it and everybody's trying to figure out. So hopefully we can figure out how to treat this and diagnose it more efficiently and properly in the future so that we don't have these issues anymore. But until then, who knows?